call the meeting to order, and let's do roll call.
Trustee Gibson?
Here.
Trustee Silver?
Here.
Trustee Audubon?
Here. Thank you. Do we have any public comment on non-agenda items? Nope. None. We had minutes from the last meeting in December 4th, 2003, but since I'm the only one who was in the committee back then, we won't vote on it. We'll just table the minutes from the last meeting and move to item number 1, which is state legislative update.
For this, we have our lobbyists from Sacramento, David Nevin and Sabrina Means, who I believe are on Zoom and ready to go.
Welcome.
So we can bring them on board. Can you hear us, David? Oh, probably not yet. Can we unmute them?
You can't see
Yes.
us.
There we go.
Can't see it.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear us?
Want to make them larger?
Yeah, I'm going to try to.
Coming through loud and clear.
Great, here we are. We have just gotten underway and we're ready to hear from you all. I just introduced David Nevin and Sabrina Means from Capital Advisors in Sacramento. Thank you.
Hey everybody. I can only see about half of you guys.
It's
If
fine.
So yes.
Oh wait, hang on, it's split. Okay, now I think I can see everybody now.
As people talk too, it'll focus up on other people, so don't let me get in the way.
Got it. Okay.
Do you want to drive your presentation, David, or would you like us to host it?
Either way works. Sabrina, do you want to do a screen share on your end, or do you want Alex to do it?
Alex, if you don't mind doing the screen share, I think that would be helpful, and then I'll just follow along and let you know when we're do the next slide.
So I will share the screen and we'll get underway. Thanks everyone for your patience.
Perfect.
Okay. I believe we're here. You can see us?
Oh, yes, I can see you. Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
I'll make it big just to see if that works. There we go. Still see it?
Yep, perfect.
Great.
Okay, thanks for having us, everyone. For those who have not met me, I'm Sabrina Means, legislative advocate with Capital Advisors Group, and I'll be presenting the legislative update this afternoon. And then, as far as I understand, David will probably jump in at the end to help with looking forward to next legislative session. So just real brief, sorry, next slide.
We've advanced
Okay.
it. Yeah, good.
Yeah, perfect. So just really briefly on the budget in regards to Prop 98, as you guys may recall, back in January, the governor proposed in his January budget proposal a funding maneuver that it was intended to help keep education funding whole in a tight budget year, but the long-term result would have been to reduce the base guarantee going forward, and that was a big problem for the education community. So the California Teachers Association led the charge in opposing that proposal, and they ended up negotiating a deal with the governor's administration in the spring. And basically the deal negotiated would suspend Prop 98 at a certain level in 23-24, and then that would mean that there would have to be maintenance factor repayments back into Prop 98 in years to come. So the final legislative deal, which involved a deal between, it reflected the CTA governor deal, but then also the legislature weighed in. The final legislative deal funds 23-24 at $98.5 billion, and that includes a suspension, and then 24-25 at just over $115 billion, and that includes part of the maintenance factor repayment that will continue for more years. And as you know, even though the budget is passed and signed in June and July, there's often budgetary cleanup bills that happen after the fact. So we've been reviewing those, and there's no significant cuts to K-14 programs. Okay, next slide. Regarding priority bill updates, just as a reminder, this is the last week of session. So any bills that are going to go to the governor need to get there or need to be sent to the governor.
Sabrina, hold on a second. Just a second, Sabrina.
Yeah, can you go back one?
Sure. We had a question on the previous slide.
Sure.
There you go.
You said no significant cuts to K through 14 programs. That's in the trailer cleanup bills to the budget the way it was crafted.
So the budget cleanup bills, they basically clean up or clarify what was agreed on in the budget. And sometimes there could be changes when the language is put into print. I believe, David, correct me if I'm wrong, there were some slight changes to like the strong workforce funding, how it was designated. And there was one other thing, but there was nothing significant that was in print in the trailer bills that we saw after the budget agreement was made in June and July.
I just don't want there to be any confusion. This is from point A is when the budget was enacted. Point B is after the cleanup bills and the trailer bills. No significant cuts during that period of time.
Yes, correct. And while you do see, a significant drop in the 2023-2024 year, a lot of that is because of this, this creation of maintenance factor. While it looks like on paper it's a cut, it essentially is a cut, but there is a promissory guarantee from the state to pay that back in its entirety when the general fund revenues are doing better than the rest of inflation and cost of living adjustments. So yeah, while we didn't see any actual cuts to programmatic spending, there were a couple of shifts, and most notably, as Sabrina mentioned, the Strong Workforce Program. There was no money necessarily cut from it, but there was about $65 million that is redirected towards a pathways program, about $5 million of that, and then the other $60 million is redirected into nursing programs and partnerships.
Go ahead.
So when Pasadena City College built our budget basically a year ago, what kind of numbers were we working with? How is 98.5 different from what we thought there would be?
Cool.
Or it doesn't matter because of this maintenance factor, so we'll be made whole?
Well, we expect to be made whole. Okay. We have to be prudent in our planning, which is why we have reserves, so we can bridge the gap when the state defers these payments to us, which hopefully comes sooner rather than later.
Yes, so that's exactly correct. And a very good portion of that difference between the 98.5 billion and how they get back up to 115.3 billion is using enough of the reserves in the Prop 98 reserve account to ensure that there's not, a huge or significant cash flow issue between all the K-12 schools and community colleges, kind of like what we had back in 2007, 2008. If you recall, we had to slash, programmatic spending by 20% overnight. And some of those programs took, almost a decade to actually recover. So we're avoiding that from happening in the year when we have, over $8 billion suspended in a single year for Prop 98. So, the legislature and both sides of the legislature actually, they do credit Governor Newsom with his prudence in spending, as well as his recent years of putting significant amounts into reserves to ensure that that safety net is there to cushion everybody for the next couple of years.
And we've done the same here.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide. Thank you.
Sure. So yeah, just a reminder again, so this is the last week of session, so any bills that are going to go to the governor need to be sent over by midnight on the 31st, otherwise they're considered dead for the session. The Senate and Assembly are actually still going today, and they say they're gonna have some really nights this week, and then also, I believe there's a plan that they will have session on Saturday as well. Just an update on one of the big community college bills for this session, SB 895 by Senator Roth, which, as you may know, requires the Chancellor's Office to develop a baccalaureate degree nursing pilot program, authorizing 10 community college districts to offer a Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree. Also, as you may know, the bill started out with 15 community college districts pilot programs, but in the Appropriations Committee, it was recently amended down from 15 to 10 pilot programs. It's currently on the Assembly floor and also further amended to give positive consideration for pilot programs to community colleges with existing partnerships with CSUs. You also may be aware of AB 2104 by Assemblymember Storia. This bill is still moving as well. It's very, very similar. That's basically the same thing that creates 10 pilot programs for the Bachelor of Science Nursing degree. It's currently on the Senate floor. It may happen that both bills will be sent to the governor, and the governor will have to, if the governor decides to sign, one will have to choose which one to sign.
Can I
So
ask
we're interested in the outcome on that one.
We got a question here.
question? The existing partnerships with the CSUs, what does that mean exactly? Because the CSUs are opposed to this.
So the backstory on this, and this is kind of a more recent development. Late last week, we got some word that a couple of community colleges had essentially terminated their existing Bridgeway partnerships with CSU nursing programs. And those CSU campuses called over to the governor's office, and they also called up the Senate leadership and said, "What we told you this was going to happen." So as a way of Senator Roth ensuring that that was not the intent for that to happen, it's essentially just a legislative intent that we don't want this to happen. We don't want community colleges to terminate their existing partnerships because they perceive that it'll get them higher up in the ranking for being one of those 10 pilot programs. So while it's not necessarily that the Chancellor's Office has to give consideration or has to use it as a criteria, it's the intent of the legislature that they do consider it a positive factor when they're looking at the 10 community college districts that they would select for pilot programs.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to some other priority bills. So PCC supports AB 359 by Assemblymember Holden, which basically clarifies that the CCAP, or College and Career Access Pathways partnerships, offer dual enrollment to all students, but prioritize those that are not typically college bound or that are underrepresented in higher education. It's on the Senate floor. And then you may also be aware of SB 1244 by Senator Newman, which is sort of like a compatriot bill. It allows CCAP partnerships outside of the primary community college district service area. That was on the Assembly floor. AB 1891 by Assemblymember Weber is also a support bill. It authorizes multi-criteria screening for admitting applicants into impacted health programs.
Tammy, we have a question here.
Sorry, sir.
Tammy.
Hi, what problem was AB 359 trying to solve?
As far as I understand, the basic intent of the bill was to help streamline the CCAP program, but also I think they wanted to emphasize that this pathway program is not just for students who are overachievers or who want to get college credit because they want to be more advanced. They really want to look at those students who are not typically college bound and those that are underrepresented to help elevate this pathway program for underrepresented students. That's what I understand was the intent of the clarifying measures that are part of the CCAP bill.
For example, the juvenile justice education system.
Yeah. Oh, so she said I get it. Okay, thank you.
Sure. So yeah, AB 1891 is on concurrence, so it already was passed by the Assembly and the Senate, and now it's back to the Assembly because they made some minor amendments to it, and so it's on concurrence. Once it gets off the Assembly, then it will be moved to the governor. Next slide. Okay, so also PCC recently supported AB 1805 by Assemblymember Ta, which requires consideration of including content on the case of Mendez versus Westminster School District of Orange County when adopting new instructional materials for history and social sciences. You may already know this, but I'll just add in that the Mendez versus Westminster School District helped pave the way for non-segregated public schools and helped pave the way for the Brown versus Board of Education decision. And this bill was recently, it's actually in the enrollment process to the governor. It hasn't quite been enrolled yet, but as soon as we see that, that it's changed to enrolled status, we have a letter prepared and we're going to be sending that to the governor ASAP. Next slide.
Well, really quick, there's a question.
Another question. What does enrolled to governor mean?
So once a bill is passed off of the floor in either house, then it enters engrossing and enrollment, which means that it's on its way to the governor's desk. But before you can send a support letter to the governor, the bill officially has to be enrolled to the governor, and then the governor can consider it in his decision to sign or veto the bill. Hopefully that makes sense.
So it is in his inbox.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's on its way.
That's a very good, actually, terminology. It's in his inbox, just waiting to be opened.
Yeah. All right. Next one. Okay, here's another bill I believe that may be part of your discussion tonight. AB 2586 by Assemblymember Alvarez, which prohibits the denial of employment by community colleges, CSU and UC, for students based on the status of their citizenship. This one is also on its way to, it's in enrollment or in the inbox for the governor. So we can be prepared to send a letter in based on the outcome of your discussion on this bill, which I assume will happen afterwards.
Thank you.
Next slide. Just an update also on the education facilities bond bill. So this started out as AB 247 by Assemblymember Verasucci, which was approved by the legislature and signed by Acting Governor Mike McGuire on July 3rd. And the Secretary of State assigned it as ballot measure Proposition 2 for the November ballot. What it will do is provide, if passed, will provide $10 billion total for TK through 14 facilities, $1.5 billion of which would go towards community colleges, which is, I believe it's around 15%, which is nice considering that community colleges typically get around 11% of property aid funds. So that's just a brief update on that. Next slide. So, as I mentioned, David will talk you through a little bit more of the preparing for 2025. But if you go to the next slide, I could just do a really quick timeline for submitting legislative proposals.
Well, just
So-
if you hold Sabrina, this is actually for later in our agenda. I don't know if you want to take this preparing conversation
Yes.
now, or if you want to
I
get
think
through.
we might as well move it up. Something up to now.
Sure. Okay, great. So next slide then.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's more of just like a outline reminder based on what you're looking at for the next several months in terms of if PCC did want to sponsor a bill or submit a legislative request. Basically, just going through the chart here, outreach to affected state and local agencies should probably occur by the end of October, and outreach to the delegation should happen by the middle of November. Language needs to be submitted to Lead Council by the end of November, and then the bill introduction deadline for next year is February 15th. So it's just a general time of like when you want to get started and when the bill will be introduced. And then if you go to the next slide, it's similar, but it's for budget requests. So if PCC had a budget request, the timeline is a little bit different, but basically proposals should be submitted to the Department of Finance in October, and then to the delegation somewhere between November and April. And you also have the option of submitting budget request proposals directly to the Senate and Assembly budget subcommittees on education and finance. Which could happen in March for inclusion into the 2025 Budget Act. So those are just sort of like reminder timelines for you to keep aware of. But in terms of actually developing the proposal, I know that David wanted to be able to help with any questions on that discussion as it comes up. So the next slide is the last slide, and then I can just kind of wrap up and let your discussion happen as it will. If you have any other questions, let me know. I just touched on developing proposals for next session. And then just a reminder, I hope to see some of you in Sacramento in January for the CCLC Long Day and meeting with the delegation, et cetera, et cetera. So, thank you. And again, let me know if you have any questions.
Tammy,
Sorry.
Tammy.
Does PCC typically make a budget request? And if so, what kinds of items? I know the Seraphian maybe was one of those, but should we just be like every year requesting money for something? Because there are plenty of needs.
There are, and none of you want to respond to this, or?
Last year, we asked for money for culinary arts, but it didn't go anywhere. Just sort of depends on whether it's a good year or not. And so I think you said about 3 to 5 million per legislator during good years for their entire district.
So our assembly and our state senator representative would each have $3 to $5 million?
Depends on whether they're in good standing with the right people and all those kinds of things, but yeah. Is that accurate, David?
Yes. So as as President Gomez just described it, you're more likely if you're in good standing with the leadership to be on the higher end of that. If you're one of the senators or assembly members who's routinely, given one of the quote-unquote doghouse offices, you're probably going to be on the lower end of that if you receive anything at all for your district. And that $3 to $5 million, you have to remember that every senator represents roughly 950,000 constituents, and every assembly member represents roughly 470,000 constituents. So it's a fairly big swath of people that they have to consider, and we will be looking forward to ideally a better economic situation this coming year. Last year we were actually told not to submit anything that's not absolutely necessary in terms of budget requests, just because of how bad of an economic condition we were projecting at the beginning of the year, and the leadership essentially told us tell all of our clients that it's a no-go this last year. So President Gomez is very correct on that.
So that would be this year. It would not be good to ask for any money.
Sorry, that was in reference to this last legislative session, or this last budget cycle. I think, in this upcoming budget cycle, it's very reasonable to ask a member, especially one of the newly elected members, which I believe Pasadena is going to have a new member in both the Senate and the Assembly. And it's usually a good opportunity for them to, find a way to put their stamp on their own district by doing something, for the college or for the district.
Thank you.
I have one question about that lobby day. What are the dates? Do we have dates?
Do you have dates for January yet, Sabrina, David?
It's typically the last Monday of January. I don't have my calendar out in front of me, but whatever the last Monday is.
This January 26th, 27th is, if it's typical.
I have a question. When will we know when some bills, I presume, I kind of remember by January, late January, we do know about some bills that are coming up. Is that in continuing it? Will that happen this year? Before the January meeting, will we know of some bills that we might be interested in?
Yes. So there's actually it's kind of an organizational introductory legislative session, and it's typically the first Tuesday of December. It's just a one-day intro to the 25-26 session, and it's usually just a day for the new elected members to get sworn in, and they elect their Speaker of the Assembly and Senate Pro Tem. But they'll also take that opportunity to introduce spot bills or, get the first round of bill introduction out on that day. And then once the legislature comes back, usually the first Monday or Tuesday of January, then we'll start seeing, from then up until February 15th, any Monday or Thursday, we'll see bills being introduced every single week. February 15th is just it's on this as a deadline for, this is the last day to actually introduce bills.
Thank you. Any questions? Anyone else? Student trustee?
Not
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. You're welcome to stick around while we talk about the other items, but I think maybe, yeah. So David and Sabrina, you're welcome to stick around while we finish the rest of our agenda, but I think we've reached the end of this presentation.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to working with you guys in this upcoming legislative session and wish you the best of luck with the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks again for having us.
Thanks so much. Okay, we will move to B2, SB 895. Who's going to talk about that?
So I'll tee it up, and I think it can be a discussion. This was the reflection on, this is the bill that they just talked about, the nursing program bill with the partnerships with the Cal States. And I think, as I've shared with Dr. Gomez a couple of times and he shared with me, I think it's one of our priorities is to be one of those 10 programs. And so I think there was just room here today to talk about how we can marshal our collective resources to make that goal a reality or work in that direction. Do you want to take that and run with it?
Yeah, well, we've already expressed our support for the legislation, and we have not just our legislative advocates working on this, but also staff on campus in instruction, in health sciences, and in nursing, making the argument that if, in fact, the legislation passes, that PCC should be one of the campuses that is allowed to start a bachelor's program in nursing. Now, they've whittled it down to 10, but we think we have just as strong of an argument to do it here as in the other community college. We had one of the first nursing programs, AA degrees, started in the 50s, so we have a long tradition of health education, so it's just something to mention that it is just a significant priority. It was last year during this committee's convenings as well. But there are many community colleges that are looking to grab one of these.
Who chooses the 10?
It's going to be chosen by the California Community College Chancellor's Office. There's going to be a group. Now, what we've heard is that the metrics that they're going to be using actually favor PCC. So we've got great alignment. However, like lots of these things, there's a lot of lobbying that goes on, and so we'll see what happens. I gotta believe that Riverside, where Roth is, and also the LA Community College District are gonna shave some of those, so the pool is actually gonna be smaller. That would be my judgment. And then you've got the Bay Area, and you've got Southern California, and you've got the Central Coast, so that funnel gets smaller and smaller.
How many community colleges have relationships with CSUs for nursing?
I think what I heard is that, well, I mean, everybody does. I mean, if we transfer, if we have like a pipeline to say Cal State LA, we've got students that go from PCC to Cal State LA. Now, is that a quote formal partnership? I don't know that it is. But I think what happened is that some of these community colleges said, you know what, we're not going to need to send anybody anywhere. So they just said, you know, we're just not going to do it. We're going to get our bachelor's program and we're going to do it on our own. That obviously gave the CSU a very powerful argument. And this is not necessarily, I think the CSU has been very quiet, but I gotta believe that when it, you know, now that it's in the governor's hands, or when it gets to the governor's hands, that's where the real lobbying is gonna come. Because they're opposing other bachelor's programs, so why wouldn't they oppose this? My sense, having been there,
Right.
I know that they are.
The problem is it's sending students to the for-profit schools.
Mhm. Yeah. The CSU will probably say, if you send us more money, we can expand the programs. That's what their argument is going to be. Which is true. I mean, they're limited in resources as well. And they are very, very, very expensive programs. You know, nursing is a very expensive program. But I think we're in a good position. The good news is everyone is very enthusiastic and motivated on our campus to be one of the 10 pilot sites, which is good. So we've already got one sort of hurdle, which is everyone's on the same page. So that's good.
Any other questions, comments?
I know, I was here, how competitive it was just to get into our program, right? And it's a transfer for students, so again, whatever helps increase that opportunity. But they are pilot programs, right? So they're going to be looked at and examined, I'm sure.
Opens the door. Student trustee, any
Nose in the tent.
quick notice?
Just to piggyback off Trustee Harrigan's comment, what is the likelihood of those programs to expand?
This is all speculation. If I put on my Sacramento and political scientist hat and my CSU experience, I would say that once those get started, they aren't going anywhere. You know, that's the beginning of those programs taking hold. And then I think what we would see by pilot is that you would see these being evaluated to see how the next ones will get started at other community colleges. The other thing that I think I'm assuming that the system office is going to look into are areas where there aren't very many healthcare educational opportunities. So maybe rural areas and places like that where there isn't a CSU that's offering nursing, or there isn't a Sousa Pacific that's offering nursing. So, Central Valley somewhere in the north, inland, those are places where there are no opportunities, there are no, there's no healthcare, or there's limited people in the workforce because they're not producing them, because there aren't any educational institutions doing that. So I think if there are some community colleges in those areas, I would imagine that they would also have a more, a little bump, I guess, in whether they get one of the programs.
And if we do get it, we will then have a state senator and assembly member who will be advocates for continuing to keep it and continuing to keep that money flowing once we actually have it in our hands. Any other discussion, questions on SB 895? Hearing none, let's move to B3. This is AB 2586, undocumented students having the right to be employed in the schools. So everybody has received kind of background information about this, and as they did mention, it got concurrence yesterday, so it is in the process of being enrolled and will get to the governor within the next couple of weeks. So, we have a resolution here that we can recommend to be passed at our September meeting, and then we can continue to push letters, and our lobbyists can push for the governor to sign it once we say that we're in agreement with it. So the floor is open for questions and comments.
No, I read it, I would like to support this. I would like to recommend that our board supports it.
Second that.
One of the great support of this, last year, Associated Students conducted a focus group on our academic student population. And many of them thought that a struggle for them was not being able to work on campus. It led them to taking very, unofficial jobs that, would make them work odd hours, would, give them a lot of pressure as well, which distracted them from their studies. So we are really grateful for this.
Thank you. Well, the floor is open for someone to make a motion.
Can I ask a question?
Question, yeah.
Would the student lobbyists here be considered part, are we able to support this, and take it on,
Yeah, I think the student government should weigh in too. When they should make the student government should make a resolution to support and send that to so that can be added in with our support from our campus.
So your two lobbyists are the people on Zoom?
They for the chancellor's office, or?
They work for PCC.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh.
we are all lobbyists.
Yes.
They happen to be in Sacramento 24/7, so they're our eyes and ears in Sacramento, and they work for us. But we also often, for example, I will write letters on behalf of the district about key, legislation and matters, both in Sacramento, Washington D.C., and also here locally, periodically. So, so I and our lobbyists will take your voice and your perspective and positions on these matters, and then we can share those with our lobbyists, because we're not always there. We have lobby days, and sometimes we travel there, but they're there every day, so they can share a resolution, share a letter immediately with our representatives in Sacramento.
So we can entertain a motion to recommend this to the full board.
So moved.
No, second.
Thank you. So we can take a vote. I think I know how the vote's going to go. Audrey, could you do a roll call?
Sure. Trustee Silver,
Aye.
Trustee Adegon,
Yes.
Trustee
Yes.
Gibson.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that
Student
Student trustee.
Student trustee?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. So we have a recommendation that we will report out at our full board meeting. Next is B4, Proposition 2, support resolution. There's another resolution. Who is going to lead this discussion?
I'm happy to tee it up. This came to us from the league on one of their government relations calls. As we heard, this bill, Proposition 2, is going to be on the November ballot and provide $10 billion, to the state K through 14. Community colleges get $1.5 billion of that if it passes. And so this was just a suggestion that local districts take the step of endorsing it with a resolution report. So it's for your consideration.
Yes?
What can that money be used for?
Facilities. It's a facilities bond. Correct. Statewide facilities bond.
So it's how we paid for Serafian,
Mm-hmm.
or most of Serafian.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we have so many projects, this would be fabulous.
Any other questions or comments?
We also support this and we especially appreciate the language in here which acknowledges the goal of sustainability as well as recognizing basic needs of students.
The floor is open for a motion to recommend this to the full board.
I will move to recommend this to the full board.
Thank you.
And second it?
I don't believe I'm officially part
I second it.
Thank you. Can we do a roll call?
Sure.
Thank you.
Trustee Silver?
Aye.
Trustee Ottergon?
Yes.
Trustee Gibson?
Aye. So that passes. Now we're to B5, legislative session planning. So it got teed off a little bit.
Touched on that, yeah. Maybe there's room here for further discussion, but it's up to the
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're looking forward to going in January. Every year, we send a delegation up. Usually the superintendent president goes, and there's a student contingent, and several trustees go. So we're looking forward to it, and we will meet with our representatives up there. They'll be brand new. We will tell them how to do their job because they'll be brand new. So we can just give them orders on what they need to do. So I think we're really looking forward to that. Yeah.
Well, I know Dr. Gomez has a relationship with our incoming state senator, Perez, and I have reached out to our assembly member, John Harabidian, not heard back, but boy, I would just really love to invite them to our campus so they can see, what we do, what we need. It's so inspirational if we could extend an invitation to them for a visit.
There's one complication, and that is that they aren't yet in office, and they're running against other people who theoretically are.
But anybody can come take a tour.
I understand.
Yeah, the issue actually came up on planning the water forum. The representative of one of the water districts said, "We're nervous about this forum if there's going to be candidates there pushing their candidacy." And I was like, no, there's not. Nobody's going to be talking about candidacies at our water forum. So the issue came up. Nonprofits and groups like this have to be very careful around elections and candidates. I mean, look, with Sasha, I think we should always invite Sasha because she has a position right now, and she could come as a city council person of
The mayor.
She was
as
on.
Alhambra, and not talk at all about her candidacy. But anyway, it's just making fun. Was that did that answer?
Of course, we are just thinking out loud. Of course, we are neutral with relation to the candidacies. I'm sure that all of the candidates that are still in the running would be terrific champions of Pasadena City College. How could they not? Because we're wonderful.
Yeah.
Great institution.
Yes.
Center of the universe.
That's right.
So are there any decisions we need to think about over the coming months about our lobby visit in January?
I think that the next meeting should probably be a recap of what's happening right now. There are these bills that are in the inbox, waiting to be opened. They're going to be opened. Some of them are going to be signed. Some of them are not going to be signed. We'll have a better idea as to, for example, with regard to the nursing legislation. We may want to put a full court press for that, for AB 2586. Actually, by that time, I think we would probably know about that, although...
The end of September, the governor has to sign or veto.
Right. And then there's the... So, and then at that point, we'll have a better idea also about the budget, which seems to be not... It's doing better than they projected, but not really good enough. So it's slightly better than what the Department of Finance projected, which is good, but we don't know. And we're probably not going to know till after the first week of November.
So,
There's going to be all kinds of things that could...
so yeah, we should, we can schedule a future meeting after the governor makes all of his decisions and move from there. Since I think that's all we need on this legislative session planning.
I
Yeah.
have a question.
Mhm.
So it's my first year in the position
Mhm.
of the lobby committee, and when you guys were speaking about going in January, do we go together or is it two separate trips?
It is together. That's actually, I'm glad that you attended. I hope that you and other students will attend the next session because we'd like to be even more united. What's generally happened in the past, in the last couple of years, is we go up together and the students meet separately with the legislators and the trustees and the president meet with them also at a different time. And that's great, and it works fine. But it'd be great for us to coordinate ahead of time. Of like, these are what our talking points are, and these are what the district believes about these issues, based on what trustees believe, what the administration believes, and what the students believe in terms of legislation that's planned and ongoing. So that's why I'm really glad that you're here today, and I encourage you and other students to come to our future meetings.
Thank you.
So,
Legislative conference, January 26th and 27th. It's a Sunday and a Monday.
normally the Monday is the visits when we'll do the lobby visits. Will it be that Monday, January 27th?
So we usually, they're overnight on Sundays?
Yeah.
They come back?
There's
Yeah.
programming Sunday too.
Yeah,
The group will have sessions and there's a summit that day.
and probably go up Saturday.
Because I just postponed my jury duty to that Monday, so.
And
Jury duty.
I'm excited to be there because the Black Caucus of CCLC will be having its annual awards program that evening. And we'll be doing awards to different campuses that have done well with helping Black students succeed. So I'm really excited about something that's going to be happening that weekend in Sacramento. So let's move the agenda to meeting schedule so we can talk about a future meeting date. I think that Alex can work with the lobbyists and figure out when it makes sense to next one. Presumably after September 30th, sometime after the governor makes all of the governor's decisions, we can meet and then continue this discussion about our lobby visits.
Gone October 2nd to 18th.
think after October 18th is probably a good time on.
Yeah, there won't be a big rush because the decisions are made and then there's nothing we can do about it. And they're set in stone. They're out of the Zen box. We're good. Anything we want on the agenda, item D, proposed agenda items, anything you want to see on the next agenda? Sure, probably think of things before then. So, someone can move to adjourn.
Can I remove?
If I'm not officially part of
I think so, sure.
Entertainment.
I would like to move to adjourn.
Right.
I'll second that.
All right. Well, we can do it. Let's do it by acclamation. Is there anybody opposed? All right. We are adjourned.